You don't have a time problem. You have a decision problem. You already know what to do. You've watched the videos. You know you should be training. You know what to eat. And you still haven't started. Or you keep starting and stopping and you're in the same place you were 6 months ago. So in this video, I'm going to reveal why more information is making it harder to start, why the perfect week you're waiting for never arrives, and the one decision that actually gets you to 10% body fat. I've been a personal trainer for 11 years and delivered over 8,500 one-to-one sessions, and the best way I can show you what I actually mean starts with the years I spent doing exactly what you're doing right now. And to show you what I mean by a decision problem, I need to tell you about a period of my own training that went on for far too long before I finally decided to do something about it. So for years, I was the person who read everything online, every new training thing that came out, every nutrition approach that was getting attention, every coach with a slightly different take on how to get lean. And I wasn't lazy about it. I was genuinely putting a load of effort and a load of hours in, potentially even more effort than I was putting in the gym. So what I'd do is I'd find a program that made sense, I'd start it, then I'd read something 2 weeks in that suggested a slightly different approach, which could be better than the one I was doing. So I'd switch it, or I'd spend 3 weeks planning the next perfect nutrition setup, and I'd work out my exact calories, my macros, the meals I was going to prep, and then not actually starting it because the timing didn't feel right. For example, work was busy, there was a holiday coming up. It just made sense to wait until after that. But here's the thing I kept telling myself during that period, and I can almost guarantee you've done the same. I was nearly there. I just needed a bit more information before I actually committed to it. I needed to watch this one extra video before I started doing the thing. And once I figured out the optimal approach, I'd start properly and do it right. Although the problem was that every new bit of information opened 3 more questions, and every question felt like a good enough reason to just keep researching instead of actually starting the thing. And here's the embarrassing part. I spent more time prepping to get lean than actually getting lean itself. Years of knowing exactly what to do and not really changing that much. And the problem was never the information. There's so much bloody videos online, especially when you go on YouTube or Instagram, everyone's giving the different input. There was definitely never a shortage of that. The problem was that I was using the search for better information as a way to avoid making the one decision that actually mattered. And the amount of times I've seen this with clients over the years, it's crazy. Everyone loves trying to find that next bit of information and just procrastinating on doing the actual thing. And the decision I'm talking about is exactly what the Softer Lean program in the description is built for. It's a done-for-you starting point, so there's nothing left to research, nothing left to figure out, just a complete structure to commit to from day one. It's completely free in the description. And here's the specific reason why more information makes it far harder rather than easier. Because most people assume the opposite. Every new piece of information just adds another thing to figure out. For example, should I do full body? Or should I do a push-pull leg split? Should I track calories or eat intuitively? Should I train fasted or not? Each question like this feels important because it might make a difference, but together they make starting feel impossible because there's always one more thing to sort out before you feel ready to do the actual thing. And there's always one more thing to do. There's always another bit of information you could know. But what I've found is that people who get lean and get to 10% body fat aren't the ones who found the perfect answer to every question there is online. They're just the ones who picked a reasonable approach and committed to it before they felt completely ready. And here's the other side of this, because the information trap is one version of the problem, but the perfect wheat trap, as I like to call it, is the one I see most often with clients. So most people who aren't starting aren't waiting for more information. They're just waiting for a better moment. For example, after this busy period at work, after the holiday, after the kids go back to school, once things calm down a little bit. And individually, every one of those reasons sounds completely fair. Of course, it's harder to start a new training routine when work is manic. Of course, it makes sense to wait after a holiday rather than starting 3 days before it and before you go away. But here's what's happening underneath all those semi-reasonable reasons, or excuses, I guess you could say. The busy period at work ends and something else starts. The holiday finishes and then there's another one in a couple of months. Things calm down for a week and then pick up again. The life you're waiting to calm down enough to start is just your life. It doesn't have a quiet period that lasts long enough for a proper start. The amount of times I've heard people say, oh, I've got some renovation on the house. I'm just waiting until it's finished and then I'll be able to commit to the gym. And every time I shake my head and I just think, you do realise that these things are going to come up all the time, and this is the exact reason you're not in the shape you want to be. It's essentially just being busy in different ways at different times, individually. And here's the honest truth about every single client I've worked with who finally got the result they'd been chasing. Not one of them started in a perfect week. For example, Cash here started during one of the busiest, arguably strictest periods of his life. He had a demanding job, ran his own business, he had a hectic realistic schedule with genuinely no room for anything extra. And Sam here also started in a week with me where it was manic. The weeks they started in actually looked identical to the weeks where they looked the busiest. But the difference wasn't the week itself. It was just the decision to make a start. And Sam is the client who showed me most clearly what the decision problem actually looks like from the outside. Because from the inside, it's almost invisible. He came to me after a month of consuming fitness content again. For example, on YouTube, he was always looking for the next video. He was always looking for that next little bit of information, especially when you're in bed, you're scrolling on Instagram Reels, the algorithm gets you, and you just want to know that extra little bit of information. And he'd follow loads of coaches, followed PTs, and he was genuinely intelligent enough to have a conversation about splits, calorie deficits, progressive overload. In terms of knowledge, he was as well equipped as anyone I'd worked with, and he hadn't actually started properly yet. Not in a way that had lasted more than like a week or two, because something disrupted it and he reset back to zero. So when I asked him why, and the answer was always the same version of the same thing, the timing wasn't quite right. He wanted to get a few more things sorted first. He was planning to start properly after a specific date, and each reason was completely logical on its own. I get it, I've been there as well. There was always something genuinely happening that made the current week a slightly worse time to start than the next one. And here's the thing I said to him, and it's the thing I'll say to you as well. There is no version of your life coming where the week is good enough to start properly. The week you're waiting for doesn't exist, and every week you spend waiting for that perfect week doesn't get you any closer to where you want to be. So what we did is something really simple. We looked at the actual week Sam was living in. For example, the meetings, the social stuff, the nights out with the mates or the missus, the things that weren't moving, he'd always have them in. So we built the program around that week rather than the ideal version of it. For him, and as I say to most clients, it's 3 full body sessions a week which fit around what was already there. And a nutrition plan that worked around his schedule, not one where he wouldn't be able to follow it. So for example, he would have a date night with his missus every other week. He'd go out with the lads every couple of weeks as well. So on those days, I wasn't going to plan in something where it was really strict and he had to follow a strict meal plan. There was inevitably going to be some beers consumed. So I needed to adjust the plan around that so that he was still making progress, but didn't feel like he was going to throw it all up the wall and that he couldn't go out. And he didn't want to be the one who had to say to his mates, sorry, you can't go out because my PT said I've got to be on my diet. And here's what happened within the first few weeks that changed everything for him. He started seeing results, and it wasn't because the week was perfect. It was messy and it was busy, same as all the other ones before it, and like a lot of clients, but because the program was built around the reality of his actual life rather than the version of it that didn't exist, he actually started to see the results coming. So that meant the motivation to keep going with him was there. I mean, the last thing you want to do is put time, effort, and energy into something and not reap the rewards. And most people wait for motivation before they even start. But motivation comes after you start. And that's the order it actually works in. So here's what the decision actually looks like. Because saying just commit isn't specific enough or tangible enough to be useful. So the decision isn't I'm going to get fit. That's not a decision. That's more of a wish. The decision is this one. One specific program, 3 specific sessions a week, starting this week. Not next Monday, not after the weekend, this week, with whatever is already in the diary. That means if you've got a work dinner on Wednesday, for example, and a friend's birthday on Saturday, the program works around those things rather than being derailed by them. The session that was going to be Wednesday, for example, happens on Tuesday or Thursday instead of the original day. The birthday gets enjoyed properly because the training is already done. For example, do it early morning. Even if you have limited time, you've got stuff on with the kids, just get a 30-minute session in. And it can be done from home as well. The specificity is what makes it a real decision rather than just a vague intention you say you're going to do. So which program should you follow? Well, one specific one which you know which works for you. And how many sessions should you do? Well, I always say 3 sessions a week, full body, all under 1 hour, so that we can hit all muscle groups at least twice per week. And even if you miss one and you can only do 2 sessions, it doesn't matter because you're still hitting all of the muscle groups in every session regardless. So you're still going to make progress. And here's the thing about starting in a less than ideal week that most people never quite believe until they've experienced it. A less than ideal week that actually happens is worth way more than a perfect start that never does. What I've actually found is that clients who start in less than ideal times of their life, where they're really busy at work, whether it's kids, whether it's travel, whatever it may be, they're actually people who get the best results because they've already been able to follow it through less than ideal times, so that inevitably when things maybe do calm down just a tiny bit, they're able to follow through with it really easily and they never go off track. And the person who just waited for the perfect week never really gets the results, and they end up watching videos like this all the time. And the Softer Lean program linked in the description, which is completely free, is mapped out around this protocol, so make sure you get that. I want to be straight with you before you click away. Every week you spend waiting is another week that doesn't arrive, not a week you're getting closer to being ready or been lean or been in great shape. 6 months from now, you'll either be significantly further along, you'll be leaner, stronger, or at least closer 10% body fat, or you'll be in exactly the same position, wondering why you didn't just start. And the difference between those two outcomes isn't genetics, it isn't the plan, it's whether you made the decision this week or just kept waiting for a better one. But with all that being said, here's what most people then discover once they actually start. And it's the thing that keeps the momentum going once the initial decision has already been made. The first 2 weeks are the hardest, not because the training is brutal or the nutrition is miserable, but because it's building a new habit. Because building a new habit does have friction at the start. And here's one specific thing that makes those first 2 weeks significantly easier than going in blind. And I've got a video that covers exactly what that is somewhere over here, so watch that next.